Okay, good morning, everybody. Bruchim Aboyim. Thank you. Sunday morning, there's going to be a special shiur and Farbrengen in honor of Reb Nechemiah's 50th birthday in Rabbi Twersky's shul. Lime Kiln. 62 Lime Kiln. Everybody is invited. I'll have the schus to be giving the shiur. It's Rosh Chodesh Adar Beis. Davening is what time? And the shiur is what time? Oh, they changed the clock. What time is the shiur? 11? Okay, beautiful. They're going to daven there, and then I'm going to be giving a shiur there, 11:30, and there'll be a big breakfast and a suda, and Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni, Marbe B'Simcha. Everybody is invited, and Mazel Tov. Oh, Rabbi Twersky. Yeah. Chodesh Adar Mistama wegen dem Eibishten. Okay. What did you say? Marbim B'Simcha. We are up to page 296. Seif Tes. The main point of last shiur, learning here the Maamar Reishis Goyim Amalek from Purim Tavshin Tesvav, Purim 1955. The main point was that when one is confronted with a type of reality like Amalek's reality, where the opposition is not based on seichel, it's not based on rationality, and therefore you can't defeat it with rationality. Like we have in halacha, the way it comes in is the way it goes out. The way it's absorbed is the way it's spit out. It doesn't come in through seichel, it won't go out through seichel. So there is different levels of the soul. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay, yechida, that was the main explanation. Nefesh is the way the soul relates to actualization, the way it governs the body. Ruach is emotion. Neshama is understanding. And it's different parts of the brain that have different parts of the soul that relate to different experiences in the person. They're responsible for different experiences in the person. And you always have to know which part is being aroused and being addressed. Right. Then you have Chaya Yechida. What's Chaya Yechida? Chaya Yechida is transcendent levels of the soul. Chaya, he said, is the ability to know something in the most visceral and intimate way, like when you see it. No question will refute it or destroy it, because the relationship to it is so profound, it's so deep. It's not lamata min haseichel, it's lamayla min haseichel. In other words, it's ready to go through the whole process. And you have to go through sometimes the process, because if a person is a skeptic or a person has questions, they need to make sure that their seichel doesn't disturb the process. But ultimately, you reach a level of recognition that is much deeper than that. You know who you are, you know who you're not. And then there's Yechida, and Yechida is b'chlal no opposition. As he said, Yechida is complete oneness, Yechida liyachdach. And in the place of Yechida, there's no Le'umazah, there's no Metzias that you have to be Mavatal, there's no reality that you have to nullify, because L'chatchila there's no Metzias outside of Atzmos Ein Sof. And each soul has that Pchina of Yechida. When it's manifested, when it's embodied, when it's revealed, there's nothing outside of Atzmos Ein Sof. And he said, Amalek, which that position is not Al Pi Seichel, or even Al Pi Midas, but rather it's rooted in a chutzpah, in a gaiva, that's not Al Pi Seichel. Like he spoke, there's different types of arrogance, different types of hatred, different types of opposition. So when a person tries to oppose Amalek with nefesh, ruach, and neshama alone, it's not successful. The language that's necessary is a completely different language. That's the language of Chaya and especially Yechida. As he puts it, nefesh, ruach, neshama are koiches pnimim, and therefore they're b'medidah v'hagbala. There's a measurement there. There's a finiteness there. So they can affect things that also have a measurement and a finiteness. But things that are beyond hagbalas, beyond limits, beyond time and beyond reasons, they have this insanity to them, this infinite quality to them, even if distorted. So one needs the koiches makifim, the koiches that are transcendent, that are also infinite, that are not defined in a particular form, and that's chaya, and even more than that, yechida. That was the main point. Now we'll go further. Sif Tes, page 296. Al Zeh Amar Moshe Yeshua. This is what Moshe said to Yeshua after Amalek declares war against the Jewish people. Vayavei Amalek vayilachim im Yisrael b'refidim, as it says in Parshas B'Shalach. So Moshe turns to Yeshua and he says, P'char lanu anoshim v'tzei v'hilachim b'Amalek. Tzei hilachim b'Amalek. As he says in 46, footnote, B'Shalach, Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Tes. Parshas B'Shalach, that's Shmois, chapter 17, Pasuk Tes, verse 9. Moshe tells Yeshua, choose for us men or people and go out and combat Amalek. So there's a Moed Dikadiyuk from the Alter Rebbe here, from the Balatanya, in Torah, Parshas Tetzaveh. He says the word Lanu seems superfluous. Moshe should have said, P'char anoshim, v'tzei v'ilachim b'Amalek. Obviously, it's our people. We're not going to help Amalek. He should have said, P'char anoshim, choose people, choose men, choose the right people, and say, and go right. He says, P'char lanu anoshim. Choose for us. Yeah, obviously, we're not choosing people to go assist Amalek. It's P'char lanu anoshim. So the Rebbe says, Shekadei li'ilachim b'Amalek tzarech liyas anshe Moshe. The Rebbe says, to fight Amalek, you need a specific type of people, a specific type of person. You need Anshe Moshe. B'char lanu anoshim. Make sure they're lanu. Of course, they're going to be on our team. That's not the Yeshua didn't need to know that. B'char lanu, they have to be lanu. They have to belong to us. What does it mean they have to belong to us? So the Rebbe's lashon is Anshe Moshe. They've been Moshe's mention. Moshe's people. So what's pshat? Doesn't just mean they're loyal to Moshe. Means, what does it mean they're loyal to Moshe? Anshe Moshe means they're people of Moshe. This people, it's felt in them, Moshe. What's the union of Moshe? The whole name of Moshe, like the Torah says in Parashat Shmos, that the daughter of Pari gave him a name Moshe because I plucked him out of water. I drew him out of water. The word Moshe, Masha, Mishisiu is I drew him, I took him, I extracted him from the water. He was already in the water. The taich of that spiritually is Meha Chachma. Waters are the waters of Chachma. Ein Mayim, the Gemara says about Bakame Mayim al Torah. Water represents generally the flow of Chachma. In other words, in Moshe's neshama, you have embodied not only nefesh, ruach, neshama, but also chaya. V'lachein aydei anshe Moshe. Shadavka al yodi nimsheches b'pnimis u'bislapshus gam b'chinas chaya koiches hamakifim evshaliyas tzei hilachem ba'amalek. We explained before that nefesh, ruach, neshama. Nefesh is connected to Maisa. Ruach is connected to Midas, Neshama is connected to Bina, and Chaya is connected to Chachma. Chachma is like seeing something. It's a clarity. There's a clarity in Chachma. When the person has an epiphany, it's called a barak hamari, like a lightning, a light bulb goes into your brain. It's like you see it. With the third eye, you see it. So there's a connection to it that is very, very profound. It's very intimate. And that's what real Amunah means. Amunah is not lower than Seichel, it's beyond, it's higher than, it's like Re'iyah. The soul sees ultimate reality. It's like a sixth sense that the soul has. When cultivated, it gives the soul the ability to experience ultimate reality. Leis machshava tfisa beklal, it says in Zohar. No machshava could be teifes alakus. But Chachma is not machshava. Chachma is like the of Chachma. It's koyach ma. Moshe says v'nachnu ma. It's twice. What are we? So the Rebbe says Moshe is the b'china of v'nachnu ma, koyach ma. That's connected already to the chaya of the neshama. Chaya of the neshama, that's the re'iyah of the neshama, the certainty of the neshama that's beyond only seichel. It's beyond pilpulim. It's beyond comprehension. So he says, b'chai lanu anoshim. Moshe Rabbeinu comes from the Mayim. He comes from the Mayim, Meya Chachma. The Rambam says in Hilchos Mikvayis that a mikveh represents Meya Das HaToher. So Moshe comes from those waters. That's what it's representing. Mina Mayim Mishisiyu, B'chai Lanu Anoshim. Choose our people. Why? Because it's not just a physical war against Amalek. So you need Pashut soldiers who know how to fight. They could fight Amalek. It's also obviously you need them. But here you're talking about Amalek on every level. Only Anshe Moshe have that relationship with Chaya Yechida that they can combat Amalek. For Inyan Bazah, the explanation is L'chayre in Emuva and Masha Chaya Yechidim Koiches Makifim She'enam Bayim Bepnimi So B'Slapshus. Apparently we need to understand why is it that Chaya and Yechidim are called Koiches Makifim. Again, what are Makifim? Makifim means it's not Pnimim, it's Makifim. Pnimim means it goes into the Pnim, inside. Makif means it surrounds it. Spiritually, what does that mean? Pnim means it's integrated into the system. Makifim means it transcends one system. And therefore its impact is on a level that can sometimes be unconscious. Because the person may not have the keli, may not have the ability to experience it in a conscious way within his or her modality. Yichai Yechida called koiches makifim that are not, usually don't come bepnimius, or behislapshus, enclosed, manifested, embodied. What's the question? Shadegam benegel b'chinas nefesh roch neshama hinikidei shiyu koiches pnimim v'yuchlu lislabish b'nefesh abamas lachrei zegam b'haguf arei zedav b'koyach hamafli lasis shemakasher ruchnis b'gashmiyis v'lulei kakoyach hamafli lasis adegam b'chinas nefesh roch neshama lo hayichelam lavi b'pnimius or behislapshus. Even Nefesh Ruach Neshama, the fact that they could become koiches pnimim, they could become faculties that are integrated, that are enclosed in the animal consciousness, and as a result of that in the body, that itself is a pella, it's a wonder. The Ramah writes in Shulchan Aruch, he brings it, Ramah Yerachayim Simon Vav, that when we say Ashayatzar in the morning or when we go out of the bathroom, we make a special bracha, what do we say? Baruch Atah Hashem Roifei Chol Basar Umafli Lasas. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting bracha. He heals all flesh. Umafli lasas. He does wonders. Umafli lasas. Pella what he does. Mafli from the word pella. Wondrous, stupendous, beyond. Right? Like nifla, ala niflayas. Adoina niflayas, like we say in the morning. So the Maamar says, what are we talking about? He said, we're talking about the kishur, the connection of soul and body. Don't take it for granted, he says. It's a pella shebapella. Ultimate ruchnius, which connects with ultimate gashmis, and there's a seamless, they become like a seamless whole, to the point that you can't even distinguish between the two. Because I have a soul, I don't know, I have a body, I don't know if I have a soul. You can even deny the concept of a soul. Some want to say that we're just a machine with electrical currents. And the electrical current is what's responsible for everything. Consciousness, okay, I don't know, it's an interesting machine. It decides it has consciousness too. It's like your phone will decide tomorrow it has consciousness. They're already deciding. There was a press conference last June with artificial intelligence in Geneva, in Geneva, in Switzerland. And they had like a bunch of ARs. They looked like people. And the reporters interviewed them. The UN arranged this, the United Nations. And lapella it wasn't anti-Israel. Usually if the UN arranges something, it has to be this wasn't, at least not that I know of. Before they started, they told the reporters, there may be a delay in the answer, but don't think it's because of those who are answering it. It's because of the internet connection. Don't think that they're delaying their answer. They're not delaying their answer. It's B'neged Kememra. So one of the questions was, one of them asked artificial intelligence, do you think it would be better if you guys would run the world rather than people? You would take over the governments, you would run the countries, you would make all the decisions. He said, of course. We don't have your egos. We don't have your biases. We're not this is the AR. We don't have your agendas. We're not enmeshed in your politics. We don't come to things with all of your insecurities and all your problems. Of course, we would wonder, well, there would be a much more normal and rational and peaceful world. Yeah. The system didn't hurt you. No wounds. Yeah. I don't know if he said that. We don't have any trauma. I don't know how much he learned yet.
This answer is actually proof that there is something that's conscious. This answer is actually proof that there is something called consciousness.
Yeah.
Consciousness.
Why?
Because if you don't have consciousness, then you could say there's no ego, there's all these other things. But if you do,
Yeah. I'm a chayid, there's no ego, no consciousness, no ego. So they asked them, the second question was, are you going to do it? Are you guys going to stage a rebellion and take over? This was very deep. He right away said, why would you even ask the question? Why should we want to hurt those who created us? Yeah? Why should we want to hurt those who created us? I hit avart. Why should we go against those who created us? We owe our entire existence to those who created us. Why should we go against them?
they still have a lot to learn, I think.
I said, people don't talk about the one who created them that way. Why should I go against the one who created me? It was a starke Wort. Why? My whole existence comes from there. Where's this idea coming from? I'll call upon him. So the Ramah says, So the Ramah says, that's how Mafli Lasis. Mafli Lasis is the kishur, the connection of neshama and guf. And it's such a connection that the neshama and the guf mamish become one, to the point that you can't even distinguish between the two. When the neshama is living in the guf is an embodiment of the soul. It's not like you have two things. Oh, here's my body and here's my soul. My soul is one part and my body is another part. It's completely one. In neshama itself, though, there's two b'chinas. There's nefesh habahamis and there's nefesh halakis. Nefesh habahamis is nefesh habasa bedami. It's the soul that lives in the blood. So to speak, the animating, vivifying consciousness that vivifies the body. It's responsible for the life of the body. Not only the life, all the functionality of the body, and not only functionality, but the entire personality of the nefesh habahamis. As we learned, it has seichel, and it has midas. There's nefesh, and there's ruach and neshama in nefesh habahamis. And then you have the nefesh halakis, which is a chelik elakami mal mamish, and that's manifested and embodied in the animal soul, and through that in the body. And that's why the souls are so deeply connected. So the Rebbe says, even the nefesh ruach and neshama to come into the nefesh habahamis is already mafli lasis. To be able to create that marriage. It's not a marriage of two separate people living in the same house. It's a marriage where it's often indistinguishable. You know, what's coming from my nefesh halakis, what's my nefesh habahamis, because they're so tight. The kinship is so profound, it's so acute. So it's mafli lasis. That's what we're saying. Roifei chabasa mafli lasis. Why do we say it by Asher Yatzar? But Pashtas, the reason is because that's when we're celebrating like the magic of biology. I mean, it's one of the times, right? We don't think about it, right? I ate something and somehow my digestive system knows exactly what to do and knows exactly how to break down the food. Usually people go for 10 years to university to learn about the difference of glucose and fat and the protein and all the energy in the food and how to break it down and how to understand what it does for you. And somehow a little baby who was just born knows everything on its own. The body knows how to break this down. This goes this goes here, this goes there. This is garbage. This is going into the bloodstream. This is becoming fat. And then when it's ready, the person goes to the bathroom, gets rid of all the psilas they have to get rid of. It's a p'chin of roifei chalbaso mafli lasses. So the shaila is if even nefesh ruach and neshama on its own can't come in bepnimius of bislapshus in the nefesh habamas. It's mafli lasses. Im kein mitzad hakoyach mafli lasses hari bichot lekasher beguv gam b'chinas chayi yichidish gam hem yu b'derech islapshus pnimis. So mitzad mafli lasses even chayi yichid could be completely embodied. Ach inyan hu shakoyach hamafli lasses nizgal erakadei lekasher ruchnis begashmis. The answer is koyach hamafli lasses creates the spirit. It creates the connection between the spiritual and the physical, which is mafli lasses. Mafli lasses. Like don't take it for granted. It's a pella shebeployim every moment that the ruach and the geshem, the metaphysical and the physical, the spiritual and the physical, not only become connected but become completely one, and there's a seamless flow between them to the point that it's indistinguishable where one begins and one ends because they're really one. They become one. Aber beruchnius gufa, in ruchnius itself, yesh inyanim sheyichelim leslabish gam b'makom sheyesh taruvas toivera, v'yesh inyanim she'enim yichelim leslabish b'makom sheyesh taruvas toivera, v'yichide v'chaye v'yichide im koiches kele she'enim yichelim lavi b'makom sheyesh betaruvas toivera. In ruchnius itself, you have things that could tolerate being enclosed in a place where there could be a mixture of good and evil. But then there's those things, they can't be in such a place. Chaya and Yechid are types of koiches that they cannot be embodied in a place where there's a mixture of tov and ra. Al derech shematzinu, just like similar to what we see, sheyesh inyanim nalim, sheyichelim lavi gam bebri yitzid asiyah. There are sublime realities that can come and be manifested even in the world of Bria and Yetzirah and Asiyah. Just like when we talk about the world of Atzilus, it's manifested not only in the world's Bria Yetzirah, but even in the lowest world, the world of Asiyah. As the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya explains in Tanya, the fourth section, chapter 20, which begins Iyu v'chayoy ichad, Iyu v'garmoy ichad. He actually wrote it a few days before his istalkos. Sha'ores hakav, sha'yameir bekelim diutzvidas the malchus datzilus baka parsei moem va'ara da'ara b'cholan evrayim v'nitzanim v'nasim gam b'elam asiyah. He explains that the ray of the kav is that original line that comes in post tzimtzum into the empty space. So a ray of the kav, which was illuminating the vessels of the 10 spheres of Malchus of Atzilus, breaches through the parsa. Parsa is the curtain, the veil, and a ray of the kav permeates all the Nivrayim, which means all the created beings of Bria, all the Neitzarim, anything formed in Yetzirah, Neitzarim, and all the Nasim, everything created in Asiyah. Al derech ze matzinu binyan hanavua shehu ma'atzilus. What do we see from here? That a ray can reach Asiyah too. The same is true we find the concept of prophecy, which prophecy generally is that your antennas are tuned into Atzilus. That's what makes a Navi a Navi. Shah Navi nimtza b'olam Asiyah. The Navi existed in this world, in Olam Asiyah. Ubiyoyse b'olam Asiyah nimshechu mizgal etzla yinyan avu shel Atzilus. And in Asiyah he experienced a prophecy, a flow that comes from Atzilus. This means it obviously was only a prophet. A prophet obviously was extremely refined, but still the Navi was an Asiyah. But this means that there could be some type of revelation, even from Atzilus, that can be manifested, and manifested b'pnimis, even in a place where there could be mixtures of different energies, including toiv and the opposite of toiv, good and the opposite of good. But then there are higher, more intense forms of revelation. They cannot be expressed, embodied, in a place where there's a mixture of good and not good. This we find about the concept of circumcision of a bris. After Avram Avinu did his work, and he withstood many trials and tribulations, the nisyonis. In order for Avram Avinu to have the revelation of great lights, of great energy, through which he experienced what's called Hayei Tamim, Hashem says, Hisalech lefonai ve'Hayei Tamim, at the end of Lech Lecha. Walk before me and become Tamim. Become Tamim. Tamim means whole, complete. And for this, he told them he gets to undergo a bris, a milah. So even though Avram Avinu did his avodah, and he withstood many trials, and one can only imagine, or not, the profundity of consciousness that Avram Avinu was living in, how deep, how authentic, how true, still, in order to experience yet a higher level of to the point that he would become tamim, whole, Hashem says, now even you have to remove your foreskin, your arla. And he's 99 years old. In other words, he has to remove even a type of blockage that did not obstruct all the lights and all the flow of energy that Avram Avinu had before the bris milah. There's a story that the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, he was the father of the Rebbe Nayatz. He passed away Beis Nisan Tov Reish Pei, 1920 in Rostov. When he was 4 or 5 years old, he went into the Tzemach Tzedek. It was Parshas Vayera. It was his birthday. His birthday is Chav Cheshvan. He went in for his birthday to the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was already right before his Istalkus. So Tzedek was the grandson of the Balatanya, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he started to cry. I heard a story from the Rebbe by Fabring, and he used to say it not every year, but he said almost every year, Shabbos Vayera. He said it a lot.
His grandfather,
Someone said it was the Rebbe's grandfather, but through his father. The Rebbe's wife was also a granddaughter of the Tzemach Tzedek.
I mean, the Rebbe Rashab.
The Rebbe Rashab's grandfather, yeah. The Alter Rebbe was the Tzemach Tzedek's grandfather. The Tzemach Tzedek was the Rebbe Rashab's grandfather. Tzemach Tzedek was the Rebbe number 3. The Rebbe Rashab was the Rebbe number 5 because he was a grandson. The Rebbe Rashab's father was Reb Shmuel, the Rebbe Marash, and he was the youngest son of the Tzemach Tzedek. So it happens to be that the Rebbe was also a grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek through his father, and his wife was a granddaughter of the Tzemach Tzedek through her father. In fact, the Rebbe and his wife were both named after the Tzemach Tzedek and his wife. The Rebbe's wife's name was Chaya Mushka. That was the Tzemach Tzedek's wife's name. And the Rebbe was Menachem Mendel after the Tzemach Tzedek. So it happens to be they were both named after the Tzemach Tzedek and his Rebbe's. So the Rebbe Rashab started to cry. He was a little kid. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, "Was veinsta." So he said he learned in Chumash in the parsha, "Vayirei love Hashem beilonei Maamar v'yoshe pesach el gechayei." After the bris, at the end of Lech Lecha, Hashem appeared to Avram Avinu. In the middle of the day, he's sitting at the door of the tent in the heat of the day. So he said, why doesn't Hashem appear to me or to us like he appeared to Avram Avinu? That's why he's crying. Different people cry for different things. So the Tzemach Tzedek told him, as a Yid, zu 99 Jahr is machlet, as darf sich mal sein, is wert, as Eberster soll sich beweisen. A Jew who's 99 years old decides that he needs to go through a bris. So he's a keli that Hashem should reveal himself to. The Rebbe Rashab told over the story. This was ingrained. That's what he's saying here. Usually, a person goes through such avodah, and you're talking about Avram Avinu. So at the age of 99, you're complete. There was such a sensitivity to truth that Avraham Avinu still felt that he has a foreskin that he has to remove. It's not just the physical concept, it's the spiritual concept. Arla represents, the word Arla means Arel, right? Stuffed. Something is Arelim Yiyulachem. It says about Arla. When something is plugged, when something is blocked, it's called Arla. Obstructed. And that's why it's called Arla. Arla is the foreskin that blocks the Aver Hamila. And you have to remove the Arla. That's what Hasaras Arla is, removing that Arla that covers over. Now the Rebbe explains in a Maamar, Hafla de Kavart, he actually said it at a bris of his grandson, Baruch Shalom, the oldest son of the Tzemach Tzedek, Tovkov Samach Vav. He explains in a Maamar the union of a bris. And he says, it's a Hafla de Kavart. Creation, like we learned in previous Shunim, everything in creation is the Dvar Hashem. It's the divine energy. Baruch Sha'amar v'haya olam. So essentially, there is a flow from the creator to creation, and it's constant. And that's what we all are. We're a manifestation of that flow. We don't feel it because there's an arla. There's an arla. There's a blockage. And the flow happens through that, and therefore, our vision is blocked. If the doors of perception were cleansed, we would see that there's a direct flow of energy every single moment, and we are an embodiment of that energy. Because Nasa Adam B'Tzalmeinu Kidmasenu, a person is created in the image of Hashem. So the Balatanya Alter Rebbe says a person is the same thing. Which part of a person creates life? The life comes from the seed. Life comes from the Ois Bris Kodesh, from the seed of life. That's how we create a child. That seed of life, when it's conceived and impregnated by the nukva, by the feminine, that's what creates a child. So the source of life, the source of real creativity of a person, comes from the Ois Bris Kodesh. We also have there's an arla. there's a blockage. So he says the removal of the arla is not just an individual thing. It helps a person remove the cosmic arla. That there should be Gili Elokos, there should be able to be a revelation of the flow of energy without obstruction. But L'chayr Avraham Avinu could say, he did his avodah, he has all these nisyonos. Now he has to have a bris. So Tzemach Tzedek said, a Yid 99 years old decides that he needs to make a bris. This is what created the revelation. Obviously Hashem told him, but he told him he was ready for it. He was open to it.
So does that mean as we get towards Chaya and Yechida, that the Yechida itself is an insanity of Kedusha?
Yeah.
That is an opposite?
Yeah.
So he was at the level now of...
Yeah. So the vart is, why not before? See, that's what he's explaining. Before, everything he had, the Arla wasn't a contradiction for it. It can be present in him even with the Arla. But at this moment, he had to experience a type of self that what before was not a blockage, but today it's a blockage. And the same is true in people's lives. Yesterday, this may not have been an Arla for me that obstructed anything. Because what I was about to experience, it was fine. It could live in this place, even though there's still some foreskin. And this really gives comfort to people, because sometimes a person reaches a certain plateau, a spiritual plateau or an emotional plateau, and things seem to be wonderful. And then they hit a wall, a stumbling block, and it seems like they lost everything. They're plunged into a darkness. What happened? Why did I fall so back? How did I go backwards? He says, no, you're going forward. You're going forward. You're opening yourself up to you're ready to open yourself up to a higher reality, and this higher reality cannot come in with this arla. Yesterday you can afford this arla, you can still afford this lie, you can afford this blockage, you can afford this little foreskin, whatever it looks like in your life. We're talking here about emotional arlos. Right? Umaltem es arlas lavavchem. It says in Chumash, right? You will circumcise. There's the arla of the heart. Arlas lavavchem. The heart also has an arla. It's a foreskin. It's a blockage. Timtum alev. It's the bris in the lave, yeah. Arlas lavavchem. Yeah. So yesterday I was fine. It was good. Today your soul is looking for more. It's open for more. So what yesterday's geula becomes today's galus. That's what it says. B'chol dor v'dor chayev adam l'risatz v'chilat Mitzrayim. And Alter Rebbe in Tanya says b'chol dor v'dor u'b'chol yom v'yom. It's not just. It's every day we go out of Mitzrayim. We mention Yetzias Mitzrayim every single day. What's the idea? The idea is yesterday's geula is today's Mitzrayim. So today I need to go out of Mitzrayim yet again. And since Ein Sof is infinite, so therefore today's geula may be tomorrow's Mitzrayim.
Is that the concept of Bratz of Vashal?
Yeah, and it takes a lot of courage to say that yesterday's redemption is today's Egypt. Come on, I'm a redeemed man. Yesterday you were a redeemed man. Today you're an exiled man. It's time to go out of the shackles today. You say, come on, relative to other people, this is not shackles. I'm an enlightened human being. Relative to truth, this is also shackles. So it's not like, I'm done. There's no such a thing. The moment the person thinks they're done, they're in the worst gullus. So that's what he's saying. In order for there to be a certain oil, even the arla, it couldn't be there. It's not going to come in. So his halach lefane v'yei tamim, even Avram Avinu, you have to remove your arla, whatever that means in Avram Avinu's life. Al derech zeh b'chol nefesh v'nefesh miYisrael, and this is true with every soul. Sheyesh koiches b'nefesh yichelim lislabish b'derech pnimi, gam kasher b'nefesh abahamis u'begov yesh adayin taruvis toivera. Mashenken hakoiches chaye yichide einim yichelim lavi b'slapshus kol zman sheyesh b'nefesh abahamis u'begov taruvis toivera. This is the difference of nefesh ruach neshama and chaye yichide. Nefesh ruach neshama to come into the body and to the animal soul. It's also mafli lasais, as the Rama explains, like we said before. It's also a pella of pellas. So we asked if it's anyway a pella, why can't chaye yichide also be embodied on the same level? That's what he's explaining. You have koiches in the soul that can be manifested and embodied b'derech pnimi, even when the animal soul and the body still have a taruva, still have a mixture of toiv and ra. Toiv means that which is completely connected. Toiv and ra means toiv is that which is completely one. And ra means that which is separate, even when it's still mixed. The nefesh ruach and neshama can flow there and can be manifested there and can be felt viscerally. But chaye yichide, for chaye yichide to come out, they only are manifest in a place where there's no taruvas, there's no mix of toiv and ra. In other words, if they're going to be there, they have to be there fully. They ain't the only balabas. If they're coming in, you have to clean up. You need a gut job. By Moshe it says, when he was born, it says that his mother saw that he was good in Parshas Shmos. So Chazal say, the Gemara says in Saita, shekshenolad nismali habayis kulei oira, hainu shafilu gufay haya kulei toiv, shaloi haya bei taruvasra. When Moshe was born, the house was filled with light. This means even his body, his guf, was kulei toiv, it was transparent. The light of the soul was shining through the body. The body was a channel. So there was no taruvas ra. There's no mixture of negativity. And yichida. So that's why by Moshe, by him, even the chaya and the yichida was bepnimius, it was beslapshos. It was manifested, it was embodied. Because Vatera Isaac Kitoivun Esmali Abayas Kuliyoda, so the Keli was completely pure. Because when Yechida emerges, what emerges is there's nothing outside of Ein Sof. So when that emerges, there's no other mixture of Toiv and Ra in the person. It's Yechida Liyachtach, it's complete oneness.
So if that happened, why is the need for a Milah?
It says Moshe Rabbeinu was born mahol. He was born circumcised.
So the concept of Mila means that level
Right.
of Yechida is obtained by a Tina.
Right. So there was no arla by Moshe.
So that at a bris there's a revelation of light. Even
Yeah.
though we mean that.
Yeah.
Is that the concept of Eliyahu?
Yeah.
eliciting from that?
Yeah. Yeah. And Eliyahu, I think, is connected to the level of Chaya in Kabbalah.
My mistake.
Yeah.
You're correct. Moshe didn't need.
Right. The Gemara it says in Chazal, Moshe was born. One of the interpretations is that she saw that he was already born after a bris.
And that would be true of any of our avos that didn't need to be Gamal. Wasn't there others that went to others?
Yeah. So, Avram and Yitzchak, it says clearly there was a bris. And Pashtas Yaakov also. But it says by Moshe clearly that he didn't need. An interesting thing, I had an uncle, my father's brother. He passed away not long ago. His name was Shalom. And he was born on Zayin Adar, which is the birthday of Moshe, and he was born Noilad Mal. He was born after a bris.
Did they require a toughest dam for it?
So you need a toughest dam, yeah. It says in Allah you have to a little blood, but there was not much to do. Huh? You also have an uncle? Really? Also Noilad Mal? And you want to know something? And you could see it on him. There was a certain like a purity in him. There was a purity in him. There were certain parts of Olam Hazeh that he didn't understand. Not that he wasn't naive, but it was like a very pure, like a certain edelkeit. And his Levaya, he passed away not so long ago. So at the end of the funeral, I went over to his son and I said, I don't know, just I said, dein Tate is a reiner Reiner und a roiser Reiner. He came in clean and he left clean. You can't say that about everybody. The Gemara says in Baba Metzia, Taf Kuf Zayin, Baruch Ata b'vayecha, Baruch Ata b'tzeisecha, right? Shetehei yitziyascha min ha'olam k'biyascha l'olam. Baruch Ata v'ech, Baruch Ata b'tzeisecha. When you leave, people should be able to say you're blessed, just like when you came in. Very often you come in as little innocent angel, everybody's taking pictures. He's so cute. So he says you should leave the room the way you came into the room. Baruch ata b'vayecha, baruch ata b'tzeisecha. Yitziyascha min ha'olam shebika b'yascha ba'olam. There was like a certain. Sometimes there's something called Orlas Halev. The heart is verstoppt. It's verstoppt. It's plugged. Clogged, yeah, very clogged. So it's very clogged.
Is that one of the, I don't know if it's a measure, they say that Amalek attacks,
Yeah.
literally attacked
Yeah.
the Jews, cut off the old and, was it old and young that they did?
Asher karcha baderech vayizanu b'chakol anachashalom acharecha. That's what Amalek attacked. Now you see the connection. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he embodied Chaya Yechida 24/7. That's what he embodied. So now Moshe says, when we have to fight Amalek, B'char lanu anoshim. You need Anshe Moshe.
Only Moshe can say that.
Atazai. B'char lanu anoshim. You need Anshe Moshe. People who are in tune with the frequency, not only of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, but also of Chaya Yechida. They could fight Amalek. Because Amalek is a dangerous enemy. So they have to be able to have that shtus de kedusha, that l'mayla min haseichel, that's chaya, and even more than that, yechida, which einoid mulvadei mamish, they can deal with Amalek. Over here, Amalek won't be able to infiltrate. If they're going to go with regular seichel, then Amalek he already knows all the cheshbonis. He doesn't care. It's not negeya. That's what it says. ובכל יכולתי להמשיך כוח זה בכל אחד ואחד מישראל על ידי עיד בחר לנו אנושים אנשי מוישה שכל אחד ואחד מישראל בויכון ומגלה בעצמי יש הניצוץ מוישה שבו. What does it mean you become a man of Moshe? It means that every Jew can choose to reveal himself, the spark of Moshe inside of him. Like he says in 57, Rei Tanya Reish Perikim and Beis. Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, and interesting, it says in Gemara, it says in Parshas Eikev, Moshe says, "V'ata Yisrael ma Hashem Elokecha Yisrael meimach kiyim liyiras Hashem Elokecha." Moshe said, Yisrael, what is Hashem already asking of you? He's just asking of you kiyim, only to fear Hashem. Frag the Gemara, Yira milsa zutrusi, Gemara in Brachas. Yira is a small thing. Well, what am I asking of you already? What am I asking of you? I asked it with you for 50 cents. Yiddish, such a small thing, like Moshe is minimizing it. And for the Gemara, Lagabi Moshe milsa zutrasehi. For Moshe, it's a small thing. Asks Alter Rebbe and Tanya, Yishakayach, Hashoyel me'imach ksiv. Moshe wasn't talking about himself. He said, V'ata Yisrael ma Hashem alekech Hashoyel me'imach kim liyiras Hashem alekech. What is Hashem already asking of you? So he's saying, for me, it's a small thing. If you have Lahavdil, right, one of the most muscular, powerful people in the world, top, weightlifter, and he bench presses 1,000 pounds. Then he comes to a little kid and he says, could you bench press, 600 pounds? What am I asking of you already? So for him, it's not a big deal. But he's asking you, he's not asking himself. Shoyel me'imach. So the Alter Rebbe says, that's not what the Gemara means. The Gemara means, Legabe Moshe milsa zutrasi, Legabe Moshe and every Jew. Legabe the Moshe and every Jew, it's a milsa zutrasi. That's the part. There's a Moshe in every Jew. There's the frequency, kavayachal of Moshe, the energy of Moshe that exists in every Jew. In other words, Moshe represents a dimension in every Jew. When you reveal that, he says you can go fight Amalek. To fight the chutzpah that doesn't have a crown. It says that Amalek, like we learned earlier, you could be a king without a crown. He doesn't need a crown. His chutzpah doesn't need a crown, meaning gaiva she'ein aleh tam. It's a type of gaiva, a haughtiness, a pride, an arrogance, a narcissism that doesn't even have a tam. It doesn't have to have a reason. And to nullify it. Tsevi lachem ba'amalek has to be through Anshe Moshe. V'zeu Reishis Goyim Amalek. So this now brings us back to what he began. Reishis Goyim Amalek. Bilam says in Parshas Balak that the beginning of all the Goyim is Amalek. The genesis of the nations, Amalek v'charisei ad yovet. And he will be lost at the end. So by Pashtus, it means that Amalek was different than all the other nations. His fight against the Jewish people is unique. It's absolutely unique. When others were afraid, he decided to attack. When others didn't want to go into the hot bath, he decided to go into the hot bath, even though he's going to be scolded and scorched, just to cool it off from other people. When he was not provoked, he decided to come fight. And therefore, by other Goyim, you have Birurim, could be Masakin, by Amalek, you say Acharisei ad yovet. So he started the Maamar that the Torah is eternal in every time, in every space, and in every era. And everything physically comes from the way it is spiritually. So this mitzvah exists constantly in Avodah. So that's what he started to say, that Amalek is Reishis Goyim. Reishis Goyim means the beginning of the nations, which means you have the 7 nations of Canaan, which represent 7 midas. The 7 midas of the animal soul. And Amalek is Reishis Goyim. It's the beginning, it's the source, it's the Reishis, it's the source of all the 7 midas that are not good, and therefore Acharisei ad yovet. And in order to explain this, he started to explain the whole union of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida. So he finishes with Reishis Goyim Amalek, Shamakar Dechol Goyim, Hu Amalek, Shenyane Chutzpah B'lei Taiga Gaiva B'lei Tam. That essentially, if you go deeper, the source of all the Goyim, of all the midas rayas, Goyim as representing the spiritual energies of different midas, the source of it is Amalek. What's Amalek? Amalek is chutzpah, without a crown, gaiva, without a reason. V'hainu shaluli ha'inyan de gaiva b'litam harei gam mitzad ha'seichel eina sinas makam linyan sheni al pi Torah. If not for the gaiva without a tam, if not for Amalek, even mitzad seichel, there's no room in a person's life and in the world for something that's not al pi Torah. In other words, like the Gemara says in Saita, Ein adam oived aved elam kei nichnas boi, ruach shtus. There's a spirit of insanity, of folly, of you get shut down, you're offline, in order for the Aveda to be able to take root into a person's psyche. Like the Gemara says, once you do it a few times, right, it says, you do it twice, it's already a heter. The Kotzker said, what happens when you do it 3 times? It becomes a mitzvah. The first time it's a sin, the second time it's a heter, the third time it's a mitzvah. The fourth time, fourth time it's a hiddur mitzvah, the 5th time it's a chumrah, and the 6th time it's the only way to serve God. This is just addition to the Kotzker Rebbe's. The point is, I become insensitive. I become callous to reality. The truth is that when you talk about Torah and mitzvahs, like we learned many times, it's not a system superimposed on humanity, superimposed on reality. I want to live a normal life, and somehow God, together with Moshe Rabbeinu, decided to interfere and obstruct the process and try to ruin my life as much as possible, with every few minutes having another halacha of what's asur, what's mutter, what's forbidden, and then there's noch a chumrah. That approach is untrue, and it's also toxic, and it's very difficult. It's the exact opposite. That's what he's saying here. The idea, the whole idea of Torah mitzvahs, it's a blueprint to be aligned with life. So essentially, he's saying here something powerful. Reishis Goyim Amalek. All the midas rois, any inyan al pi Torah, and if it's not al pi Torah, it's not enough seichel. Al pi seichel, everything should be al pi Torah. But there's a nakuda of Amalek. And Amalek is self-destructive. Amalek does something irrational. So this is a fascinating thing. In other words, when I'm in my prefrontal cortex, when I'm perfectly aligned, even with my koyach haseichel, the nefesh habahamis wants to be a channel for the nefesh halakis. It's not crazy enough not to. But the problem is we become abyssal meshiga. Everyone. There's an element of craziness. There's an element of insanity. When it's broken down, that's what it comes down to. It's chutzpah b'li tam. Chutzpah doesn't mean you're a mechutzif. Don't speak to me like that. Chutzpah, essentially, all forms of irrational coping mechanisms are chutzpah here doesn't mean like, they called you in classroom, I'm a chutzpah, a chutzpahyak. That can also be chutzpah. But chutzpah is the idea where, what's the power of chutzpah? The power of chutzpah is not persuasion, it's chutzpah. Say, this guy has chutzpah. What does it mean? Like a lawyer once told me that they taught him in law school. Maybe you'll know this. I think he went to Columbia. He told me, Columbia, NYU, in New York, one of the law schools. So they told him like this: when you're in the courthouse, if the law is on your side, yell the law. If the law is not on your side, but emotions are on your side, yell emotions. And if not the law and not emotions are on your side, just yell. Just yell. Divrei chachamim benachas nishmayim. It says in Koheles, the words of the wise are spoken pleasantly, benachas. And he says the contrary, the fool screams. Why? Or the chacham can't scream. The point is, a chacham sometimes gets passionate and can scream also. Doesn't mean he's a shoyte because he raised his voice. It means he's raising his voice because it's a manifestation of passion. It's not a substitute for truth. You understand? Sometimes people are screaming, they're hollering. What sagst du? There was one.
They say facts, law, and pound on the table. It's the other word they say.
Pound on the table. Argue the facts, argue the law.
Facts
If not, just pound on the table. Okay. Could be I'm distorting it.
No, I think yours is better.
They say a maisa that the brisker Rav, they tell a story. He once went into shul. It was a Karliner chassid. There was a chassid from Karlin, Stalin. And Karlin, the minig is that you daven very loud, right? They scream the whole davening besides Shemini Esrei. You ever went to a shul in Karlin? A Karliner shul. It's already from the Aaron HaGadol of Karlin. The Briskerov didn't understand it wasn't his style, to put it mildly. So they say that he went over to this Chassidish Yid, and he said, "Good morning, Shalom Aleichem." He screamed, "Good morning, Shalom." He said, "Rebbe, was schreit er? Why are you screaming?" He said, I'm telling you hello." He says, "I'm right here, you don't have to scream." So he says, "Und der Eberste ist euch gleich da, du darfst nicht schreien." God is also right here, you don't have to scream. The Briskerov thought that he got him. He says, "I'm not screaming for the Eberste. Ich weiß ich schrei für sich, ich soll hören." I'm screaming for myself. I should hear the davening. I know Hashem is here. Ich soll hören. The Briskerov didn't expect that. I'm not here, that's the problem. Ich schrei für sich. The idea of chutzpah, they say, it's an old joke. There was once a Jewish woman. You know, the buses in Israel can get very crowded. Yeah, if you ever went, and very hot and crowded, and people are often in an uptight mood. You don't start up with the driver, you don't start up with the other people. They say there was a woman, and she comes by the bus stop, and she came onto the bus. The driver says, whatever it is, 6 shekel, 7 shekel. So she tells him, "Imata yita yedei ma yesh po etzli, la yita mevakesh kesef." If you knew what I have here, you wouldn't have asked me for money. So he thought, okay, who knows, terminal whatever. He does, okay, fine, sit down. But there was no place to sit. So she goes over to the first guy sitting by the chair. She says, if you would know what I have here, you wouldn't stay seated when I come in. So he gets up. She sits down, but it's still not comfortable because somebody's standing right over her. So she tells him, if you would know what I have, you wouldn't stand there, you would give me space. The guy moves away. There's somebody still sitting near her, so she can't be bispashtus. She wants to be more comfortable. So she tells to the other guy, if you knew what I had here, you wouldn't sit, you would give me the whole seat. So he also goes away. Yidna rachmana b'nei rachmana. Finally, there's a woman behind her. She says, Giveret, ma yeshlach shama. What do you have there? She says, chutzpah. Chutzpah. That's the power of chutzpah is, right? Rational people don't know what chutzpah is. That's why in all the PR, right, the Arabs win over Israel. Israel's busy with calculations and svaras, and we're more democratic than anybody ever was in history. Democracy in the Middle East is not a compliment. It's an insult. It means you're a shaita. It means you're dealing with Amalek. You think with rationality will show you how just we are. And the truth is, because when you're not in touch with your chaya yechida, it's very hard. It's taka very hard. You have to be in touch with your chaya yechida. And for Jews, it's hard to be in touch with their chaya yechida. Because they're trying to copy. When you're trying to copy somebody, you can't be in touch with your chaya yechida. So that's what he's saying here. So he's saying all midas rayas, it all starts with Amalek. If we want to use psychological terms, I can't help myself. If we want to use psychological terms, very good, yeah. Essentially he's saying is, there's always an element of trauma. There's an element of an irrational coping mechanism that you're responding to. If I was completely rooted in my seichel, even the seichel of the nefesh habahamas, it wants to be a conduit for the nefesh halikis. It's called living a really healthy life. The hierarchy of reality is the only hierarchy you want to respect, because it's like, imagine you're a refrigerator, okay? Just forgive my example. Imagine you're a refrigerator, right? And you're plugged in, and it's gavaldi, the electricity is coming, and the refrigerator is fresh and alive, and all the food is good. Imagine you were the refrigerator. You'll forgive my mushel. And then one day you say, you know what? I'm done with this wall. I want to be a free refrigerator. I want to be a liberated, emancipated refrigerator. I'm done with being stuck into this stupid wall of yours. And the refrigerator, I don't know how, but it hires people, and it pulls out the plug. And you know the end of the story, yeah? Yiz gadal v'yiz kadash. Right? That's the end. It's dead. For a refrigerator to be plugged in is not pressure. It's not nebach, you have to live with this burden. It's plugged in to electricity. That's the flow. Now think about this here. For the refrigerator to be plugged in only makes it a refrigerator that's functional. But here the plugging in actually allows you to live, to exist. So plugging in simply means I'm plugging into the source of electricity. Like it says in Chassidus, Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu li truma. Should have said v'yitnu li truma. You don't take contributions, you give contributions. The pshat is, all giving to Hashem is a form of v'yikchu. Not in a selfish way. V'yikchu means you're plugging yourself into the source of life. What does it take for a person to eat healthy? Why do people not eat healthy? It's chutzpah. It's a form of Amalek. There's something here. It's going to make your body align, but there's a voice in me and that's why I'm calling it trauma. There's a voice that's not rational. The voice either says you don't deserve to look good, you don't deserve to be healthy, you have a void in me, and this cheesecake is going to somehow fill it and make me a happy person. There's a lifestyle, and then it becomes already seichel midas, but it all begins with Amalek. It all begins with a force inside of me that somehow makes me feel unworthy, makes me feel alone, isolated, not plugged into the source. Once that happens, everything comes afterwards. The Nefesh Abam is there's seichel, there's midas. Amalek will develop a whole beautiful philosophy. He'll create cheers in the universities. He'll be sponsored by Qatar. They'll already teach everything they have to teach to enlighten students about human rights. One of the most interesting things about this October 7th is I don't know if you saw the group of gays pro-Hamas. It's unbelievable. LGBT fighting for Hamas. Right? Fine. I'm not going to be meidech. The same is true in a person's life. There's voices that are born in us and coping mechanisms that take us away from alignment. Reishis Goyim, it always begins with Amalek. That's what he's saying. Al pi seichel, without the gaiva, belitam, even mitzat seichel, there's no makom for an inyan al pi Torah. Torah and mitzvahs is a blueprint for a life of alignment, of being plugged in 24/7. That's what it is. That's what it is. When a Jew goes away from Shulchan Aruch, they're not going away only from a system of halacha. They're going away from life, from living fully, from being present to yourself, from being present to the source of electricity in life. And yeah, it's very easy. It's very easy to be derailed, but it's rooted in a place that's not al pi seichel. When a person is aligned and present and integrated and fully connected and they're conscious, when I'm sober, when I'm not drunk, when I'm sober, and it's hard to be sober. I don't mean here drunken with alcohol. It could be drunk with thoughts, drunk with coping mechanisms. When a person is sober, he says there's no makom for inyan she'ein al pi Torah. Ela sheyesh lo inyan agaiva belitam, shu reishis goyim, shayrish u'makir sheyuchal liyas makom ba'avana v'asaga d'seichel, shemezeh yumshach midas loy tavis midas rayos. There's something called Reishis Goyim Amalek. That itself is beyond Tam. But this creates a source that suddenly I develop a personality and I develop a philosophy and I develop a theology and I develop a whole Weltanschauung with comprehension, with Seichel. Ultimately with the 7 Midas Loy Tovus, Midas Rayos. In other words, we're learning here Midas Rayos, not like people learn. Midas Rayos is my natural self. I have to work my whole life to suppress my Midas Rayos and have Midas Tovus and become an Edele Ehrliche Yid. It's Punkt Fakert. The harder work is Midas Rayos, not Midas. Midas Tovus means Midas that reflect who you really are. Now, Aya Pera Adam Yivali, the person is taka born with the susceptibility, Yetzer Lev Adam Raminurav. Right? These coping mechanisms are not created at 30 years old. They're very, very young and very, very early on. But we have to identify what it is. Midas Rayos means broken Midas. Midas that come from my detachment, from my separateness. And they exist in me, and I need to confront them, I need to work with them. So that's what it says. Reishis Goyim Amalek. It's always rooted in Amalek, which ultimately there's no tam there. It's an inyan of chutzpah. What's that? It's an inyan of chutzpah? It's a statement of reality that's not based in the truth of reality. It's based on a cover-up in reality. And that's what happens. What happens is, I develop a way of looking at the world and a coping mechanism, and as a result of these coping mechanisms, I become alienated from who I really am, my true power, my true greatness, my true authenticity, and most importantly, my divinity, the fact that I'm a manifestation of divinity. And because I don't recognize that, I unplug, and I now have to create a life as an independent dead refrigerator. How do you make a life from a dead refrigerator? Solar panels would be good. Then you're connecting to Shemesh Amagan Hashem Elokim. So what do? Right? It's like the story of the Jew in the zoo. You know the story. There was a Jew who owned a zoo. He needed to make money. So what did he do? He had an attraction, a cage, and on the cage it said, Mashiach is here. V'gar ze'evim keves. The wolf lives with the lamb. And he had in the cage, he had a wolf and he had a lamb, and they both sat azoi. And everybody came to see this messianic phenomenon, a zoo where the Mashiach already came, v'gar ze'evim keves. And all the Christians came, Kemuvan, he had 50,000 Christians a day. The guy he made a mint. One day an Alta Yidela comes to the zoo, he takes a look, he calls over the owner, he says, Zag me de emes Ganav, tell me the truth. He says, yeah, Mashiach is here, the Evim Kev. He says, how do you get the wolf and the lamb to sit? He says, a new lamb every day. It's not a problem. They say, Amaisa, that there was once a fox. Fox was very hungry. The fox saw a beautiful bird on the tree, and he wanted him for lunch. So how does he get the bird to come down? Fox will climb up, the bird flies away. So he tells the bird that everyone is saying that this is the time of Mashiach. And by Mashiach, all the animals will get along. So you could come down already, and we're going to live in peace. And the fox starts preaching, Higiyas Mangolaschem, Anovim Higiyas Mangolaschem. All the good things. And the bird is an edel creature, so she starts coming down, and it's wonderful. At that moment, there was a hunter coming to hunt. So you send the dogs to be able to snuff out the animals. So the fox sees the dogs coming. So the fox starts running. So the bird says, Vula, still where you running? He says, they're coming to hunt me. So the bird said, you said the Mashiach is here, there's not going to be any hunting anymore. He says, yeah, but they hint, Gleibenish to Mashiach. The dogs don't believe in Mashiach. What's the nekuda here? If the refrigerator is dead, so what do? I have to put in every few minutes fresh food, a new lamb I have to put in fresh food. That's what distractions are. Every few minutes I need new food in the refrigerator to make believe the refrigerator is working. Why? Because it's unplugged. When the refrigerator is plugged in, it has a natural flow of energy. It's not in fatigue, it's not exhausted, because it's naturally a flow. And that's the whole avoid of the Nefesh HaLekis with the Nefesh HaBahamas, to plug in the Nefesh HaBahamas every single day. But that takes a constant awareness. The Hind Gleibenish to Mashiach. Reishis Goyim, the beginning of all Midas Rayas, is something that's not Al Pi Seichel. Al Pi Seichel, a person is aligned. We're manifestations of divinity. We're not separate. The life of Torah is the life of optimal health. Why would any person want to live a life in which they're not aligned, in which there's a disruption of energy? So if you go back to the core, you will see that there's an irrational voice inside of you. You could check it out. You don't have to. This is something you don't have to believe. And that's Amalek, because it's not a rational voice. You say, come on, every taiva, some are rational. No, that's what he says. But the truth is, we don't live our lives governed by rationality, because we're not computers. We live with passion, we live with emotion. Most importantly, we live with coping mechanisms. That's what we do. We need to survive. And the Nefesh HaBahamas learn to survive. And somehow, what I'm attracted to or what I'm running away from is threatening my survival. Is it really threatening my survival? That's completely irrelevant. How can I fix that? Not with cheshbonis of seichel, because it didn't happen that way. It's the emes that Reishis Goyim Amalek. But the healing always comes from a place that's much deeper than seichel. When a person does his avodah maschil ba'avodah detzei hilachim b'Amalek adei b'char lanu anoshim, and he begins with fighting Amalek how? Through b'char lanu anoshim sheboicher ba'atzma yesa inyan da'anshe Moshe. Moshe says you have to choose our people. You have to choose to fight Amalek. Every Jew needs to choose to reveal the Moshe. So when a person chooses to become Anshe Moshe, it's a choice. On one hand, Bchar means choose. Individually, it means choose to be Anshe Moshe. Choose the bittul of Chaya and Yechida. Choose it. It's not going to be automatic. Automatic, on default mode, I'm just going to go the same way. You have a person could live 50, 60, 70 years and not change a thing. It's sometimes fascinating. You have a person, but they haven't changed. Same responses, same triggers, same reactions, same thing. There was certainly no Yitzias Mitzrayim every day. Yitzias Mitzrayim every day means Seda Naya Mensch. There's a new person. So for this, I have to be B'char Lanash, not just be in autopilot. Autopilot, you can't change things. You can't create new neural pathways. Yitzias Mitzrayim and Sei Hilachem Ba'Amalek doesn't happen through being in autopilot. It's being conscious. It's being aware. It's taking a stand. Choose to reveal in yourself the B'china of Anshe Moshe. Become Moshe as a person. What does it mean, Moshe as a person? Ayid of Chaya Yechida. As I poil ba'Amalek shiyah b'acharisei adei oivet sheyis batal legamri. The kivon shezeh inyan shel chutzpah v'gaiva b'li tam ein kan inyan sheyuchel izbara. The nekuda of Amalek is adei oivet. It becomes batal because since it's an element of chutzpah and gaiva without a tam, there's nothing you could be mevader. Mashek b'negei l'sheva umas, sheva midis rayis, hinei v'chares imay habris losses l'zarai. On this we say Hashem made a covenant with Avram Avinu. V'chares imay habris losses l'zarai. Eretz haknani, achiti, amoidi, prizi, yevusi, girgashi. The 7 tribes of Canaan. Shenitin lo yakoyach malmayla, Kodesh Baruch Hu ezer sheyuchel levaredam ayidei avidasai. The 7 middas, Avram Avinu has the koyach to be mevared all the 7 middas through the avodah. So Amalek is the beginning of everything, and therefore at the end he has to go. But all the middas over there, there's no adei ovid. They could all be nizbara, they can all be elevated, they can all be sublimated. The animal soul doesn't have to be destroyed. On the contrary, it has to be educated, enlightened. The body, chas v'shalom, to destroy it. It's your Beis HaMikdash, it's your conduit. It needs to become aligned, not destroyed. But there's that nekuda of Amalek. There's that feeling that it's like a juk. What's a juk? Wie sagt man a juk? It's like a program code that woes in, and it has to be spit out. You have to. This is out, finished. This, it's like a self-destructive code, like a bug. Like sometimes in the body, there's chas v'shalom, right? It attacks the very, the very system, and you start fighting against yourself. We know some diseases. The power of the disease is it uses the healthy cells to start fighting against themselves. Autoimmune disease. So Amalek comes in and now he uses everything already. He uses your seichel and he uses your midas. It all becomes a große philosophia. One big philosophy. What's philosophy? One philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's Amalek. So that nekuda, when I have to confront that, it's like almost a dibuk. You have to spit it out. Once that happens, then you could see that the midas are really, it's little animals that are looking. They need attention. The nefesh habahamis is a behemoth. It's not evil. Its midas could all be aligned, could all be sublimated. But the Amalek giving it fuel, that chutzpah, that gaiva b'li tam, that's acharis yadover. That you can't be mevader. Why? Because it's not saying anything. All it's saying is whatever you're doing is wrong. Somebody told me yesterday something very deep about themselves. I was very nispal from the Vart. And now I understand it. This is a person who went through a lot in life. Very difficult, very, very difficult things. Not shaloi b'dara du'una. Even when, in terms of what people go through, this was like a different level. I'm not going to get graphic and detailed, but the worst of the worst, and coming from people that were so close to this person. So it was really unbelievable, and as very often happens, the system shuts down and doesn't allow you to even know anything. So this person was telling me that one of their greatest struggles is that whenever they open their mouth, afterwards they regurgitate what they said for like a few days. Anybody relates to this? You say something and then there's like an inner critic that's 24/7 is telling you how stupid you were and you shouldn't have opened your mouth and everybody makes fun of you and it was the stupidest thing. It's like an inner shame. Sometimes people who give classes have this. You give a class and then for a few days, what did I say? I didn't say it. Did they like it? They didn't like it. They almost liked it. They could have liked it. They should have liked it. Nobody came over to me. Oh, somebody did come over to me. We could go crazy. But this person was telling me generally. That's where they don't speak. When they do, there's so much shame involved. Explain to me, because there's like this inner core of like the only way you'll survive is you're not allowed to say anything, you're not allowed to have an opinion. Yeah. Just like a constant shame. So this person was telling me that they were sitting at a shiur and sharing something. And they shared a lot, uncharacteristically. And sharing good stuff and intelligent stuff. But the whole week, this person couldn't deal with the shame of why did I say something or why did I open my mouth? So I just wanted to try to understand. I asked, but you said there was intelligent things, so why? You don't understand. It doesn't have to do with the facts. My trauma is waiting to come out. Wherever it can attach itself to something, it attaches itself to something. Oh, I spoke? It has something. The facts are not negeya. It needs to come out, so it waits. It waits, right? And anything that happens, it attaches itself to this. I would have been quiet, it would have attached itself to the silence. I spoke, it attached itself to the words. Its point was, acharise adei oivet, to destroy me. That's its job. Now, in its crazy, ridiculous way, it's also trying to protect me. Because it thinks I'm so evil or so horrible that if I want to be protected, so in its own meshugana way, it's trying to protect me. To let go of that is not so easy. And that doesn't do with rationale. That's acharise adei oivet. To sit and arguing, no, I'm really a rational person, I really have things to say. The moment you start arguing with your mental chatter, you lost. It wasn't so bad, it was, not everybody hated it. It's not if you're right or wrong. You went into an orbit where you'll never win. All it wants is to keep you engaged in an incessant battle of anxiety. That's all it wants. There's an element of acharise adei oivet. Why? Because it's be'etzem oivet. That's all it's trying to do, to destroy you. The other 7 in Yonim, all the midas already. It may be Reishis Goyim, but it's not acharise adei oivet. V'charis and mayabris. There's a process of the nefesh elevating the nefesh abahamas. That's what he says. Sheyuchel avarim aydei avidas. Shas chalas v'yiseidu in the Kabbalah cell. The beginning of avodah is Kabbalah's oil, accepting the yoke of Hashem, which is the hierarchy that we spoke about. Hashem, the nefesh alakiz, the nefesh abam is the guf. And with this you connect with the avodah of chaya yichida shechavuku dvuka bach, which is always one with you. The kivan shenotes tchilas and besoifon, since it says in Sefer Yitzir, the beginning is etched in the end. Lechen kshura avodah shemitzad chaya yichida. Im havodah the poel mamish. So the avodah of Chai Yichid is always connected to the lowest places. No, it's Tchilas and Besoifon. With the avodah of Poyel, Mamish, Kabbalah's oil, It's not like Chai Yechid are all the way up there and Maisa B'Poel is all the way down there. No, it's Chilas and B'Soif, and the beginning and the end are always connected. And that's how you sublimate the 7 nations. Hashem gave them as a nachala, as an inheritance. For Avram Avinu to inherit. So Eretz Canaan is transformed into Eretz Yisrael. You see, this is what Israel has to say about Eretz Yisrael. This nobody can argue with. They have a Maisa with a green line. Israel has a thing with a green line. It's a fictional way for secular Democrats and Westerners to believe that the world will love Israel because we have a green line. Before the green line, it's democratic. After the green line, it's fundamentalist, radical settlers who are messianists. The only problem is that green line is a fictional Jewish idea that none of its neighbors agree. As far as our neighbors are concerned, every Jew in Israel is a settler, and every centimeter in Israel is occupation. The green line was a way of reconciling the state of Israel with secular democracy. But none of the neighbors believe it, accept it. The only real thing is Jews have to say, you guys read the Bible, you believe in the Bible. Christians, Muslims, so hundreds of times God said this is one piece of land He gave the Jewish people. This is our job to bring holiness here, to this piece of land. This is the only real taina. A grain line, shmin line, you see the results. It's a mockery, it becomes a mockery of the world. But this needs a nekud of chaya yechida. So Mela, what happens here? He says, with the beginning of Kabbalah Soil, which is connected to Chai Yechidi, you can be Mavada the 7 Midas. Because if a person is missing the Kabbalah Soil, they don't have respect for the hierarchy, they ultimately won't be able to be Mavada the 7 Midas. Because I get it tangled. Kabbalah Soil means accepting the yoke of Malchus Shemaim. Here again, people think it's a negative thing. It's the most liberating thing in the world. The most liberating thing in the world is to accept the hierarchy of reality and not fight it. Because it's your own hierarchy, it's your own system. It's like I decide, I don't need oxygen. I don't respect oxygen. Who decided I need oxygen? I don't need food, I don't need. Shvua shelo yishan. The Gemara says, Shvua shelo yishan, you make a shvua, I'm not sleeping anymore. I don't have to sleep 3 days. The Gemara says, you give him malchus and you put him to sleep. Give him malchus and put it to sleep, this shaita. Shvu, I make a shvu, I'm not eating. Who says I have to eat? Moshe didn't eat. I don't have to eat. 7 days I'm not eating. You give him malchus and you give him a good meal. In other words, Kabbalah's oil, people think I'm accepting a yoke. I don't like to accept yokes. I don't need yokes. I want to be a free person. It's like a person on a tree says, there's a cliff, you're on a cliff, you say, I don't need somebody to save me here. I'm a bird, I'm going to fly. Good luck. I don't respect hierarchies. Kabbalah's oil means tuning into truth. Shaitan. It's called, if you have a Kabbalah's oil, there's a real hierarchy. You want to deny it, fine. Decide you're a bird. Gesundheit, jump off the mountain. If you could fly, fine. There. People think Kabbalah's oil, accepting the yoke. What yoke? I do not need a washing machine on my head. Kabbalah Soil is the most liberating thing. It's tuning into the fact that there's a real hierarchy. There's the creator of the world, there's Hashem, there's a Nefesh Elokiz, there's a Nefesh Abamas, and there's a Guf. When they're in that order, a person can have peace in life. The moment I play with that hierarchy, now I constantly need substitutes and distractions. So once the person has that yesod of Kabbalah Soil, which is rooted in Chaya Yechida, it's soifim betchilason, then I could conquer the 7 nations. And make it Eretz Yisrael. Canaan becomes Eretz Yisrael. And then it says, when Hashem allows you to be in that land, it says the pasuk says, right? We're going to read Parsha Zachar. In the land that He gave you to inherit, over there, wipe out the zecher of Amalek. In Parshas Kiseitze it says you should wipe him out. Timcha zecher Amalek. In Parshas B'Shalach, he says, Machai emcha, I will wipe out Amalek. Milchama Hashem ba'Amalek midar, Hashem fights. So he says, the imeyos, whose fight is it? You do it or I do it? It's a student. In Kisetz, he says, you do it. B'Shalach, he says, I will do it. Machai emcha zecher Amalek. Moshe tells you, right, he says, Ksoiv zoy zikanim b'sefer sim bazni Yeshua. There's a Mulchama Hashem ba'Amalek midar der. I'm going to erase it. But in Kisetzis, so he says Azay. The imeyosh Mulchama la'avaya ba'Amalek midar der. Even though there's the Mulchama of Hashem against Amalek in every generation. And what does it mean midar der? Midar the almadeinu midar the Mashiach. K'mashach hasa b'targum. Targum Yenissim ben Usil says midar der means this generation of this world, and even when Mashiach comes, the future generations. That's midor dur. Hine aydei iskashrus in Moshe, she'ispashtuse b'chol dara v'dara, shomam shechas avayda de mesidus nefesh, shetumshach v'tifel ba'avayda shemesad nefesh roch neshama, azay nasis al yadoi erfir durech amal chamal avaya ba'amalek midor dur. So he says here, Ameri de Kavart, since the war against Amalek is through Chaya Yechida, so on the level of Yechida, you and Hashem are one. So b'meila, Hashem says it's my fight. But on the level of Yechida, you're a conduit. So b'meila, it goes through you. Because it's not separate. So because there's a connection of Moshe, there's kashrus with Moshe, and it says that the spashtus, it says in Zohar, that the spashtus of Moshe is in every door. You know, there's a b'chin of Moshe in every single generation, the Moshe of every generation. So by the hiskashrus, that alignment with Moshe, what's the yin of Moshe? Complete bittul of Chaya Yechida. That's what it means to be Anshe Moshe. Anshe Moshe means it's not Moshe as Moshe. It's Moshe who's the whole nekuda of Moshe's bittul v'nachnu ma. So Moshe helps the Jew access this avodah of Mesidus Nefesh. Even in Nefesh Ruach Neshama, that it should be connected with Chaya Yechida, like we learned before, Vatera Isikitoivu. So therefore, the Mulchama of Hashem against Amalek is channeled through Moshe. B'char lanu anoshim. In every generation, even in the day of Mashiach. Bevias Mashiach tzidkeinu b'meida b'yameinu. Okay.
This part of Moshe is in every Jew.
That's what he says. Moshe is in every Jew.
Before he said that Chaya Yechida cannot go into a place where there's still Toivah.
When Yechida gets revealed, there's no Taruvas Toivah. For it to be behislapshus, like Nefesh Ruach Neshama, before the Birur, it won't be able to be Chaya Yechida. It's not Soivel at Taruvas Toivah. You have to clear it out.
That doesn't mean that as long as a person is not in the Chemis Moshe.
A person has always Chaya Yechida, but the question is how embodied is it? When Yechida comes out, there's no room. It's Yechida, it's Yachid. There's no room for anything else.
This we could achieve through Kabbalah Zohar.
In other words, it's an expression, pure eyes don't see Ra. It's like allergic. I'm not even going to see it. It's a story about the Nachum of Chernobyl. You know the Maisa? Urei B'tuv Yerushalayim. The Nachum of Chernobyl, they say, was once Friday night, and he went into a room, and he started to touch the walls, like when somebody is in the pitch dark and you don't want to fall. At the top of the event, he was touching the walls. It was light. There was a candle burning, or a lantern, whatever. There was something burning, but so it was very strange. So they said to him, "Why are you touching the walls?" He says, "Finster. It's dark." Later, they found out that the candle was kindled on Shabbos in a forbidden way. And it was usher to have anah from it. Because if a guy does a malacha for a Jew on Shabbos, or I think actually it was a Jew who put it on, you're not allowed to have a knot from it. So they asked him, what's pshat? What's they say that he said, Chazal say about chalav akum, chalav shechal v'akum ve'en yisrael re'ehu. Milk that was milked by a non-Jew, and a Jew doesn't see it. So he says the pshat is, chalav shechal v'akum ein yisrael re'ehu. If it's chalav shechal v'akum, the Yisrael doesn't see it. Nicht gesehen. Well, what's pshat? It wasn't an avodah by him. He wasn't a chas v'shalom making shtick. The purity of his soul, it wouldn't allow him to experience this light. He was like allergic to it. So he didn't see it. His soul couldn't see this light, so it was dark. I wouldn't have a problem with seeing the light. And most people were doing it probably b'shoigig, whatever. You can't blame them. They didn't know where the candle came from. But the point is, by him, yeah. The Gemara says, "Lo yu'una l'tzadik kol oven." Right? Tosfos explains in Gittin, "B'midah da'achila." In other words, ma'aseh with the Pinchas ben Yair, a tzaddik, non-kosher food, he's not nichshel in it. Even the donkey of the Pinchas ben Yair wouldn't eat tevel, the thing that didn't have truma in mind. What's pshat? The donkey of the Pinchas ben Yair was so affected by him that it was like allergic to food that doesn't belong to it. Like it says, Avram Avinu's animals wouldn't pasture in fields that don't belong to them. Lo Yinsa de Kol Oven means there's an energy. We're connected to things by energy. You know, it's just your body is so refined. This food is not for me. Just like people who are very sensitive, right? This food I'm not going to touch. On a deeper sensitive level, the body feels this is not for me. Why? It knows. You understand? So there's certain levels of self, if it's going to be revealed, it has to be clean. It has to be clean. Sidav Zayin Rein. If it's not clean, it's not going to be there. Just like you have a self-respecting person doesn't go to certain places. Yeah? Why don't you go to certain places? You're going to walk in, you're going to vomit. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Huh? You don't know what I'm talking about? There's places that if someone is in touch with their soul, if you walk into these places, you start vomiting. Or you get nauseous, you go home sick. Certain clubs, whatever, places. Other people, that's where they get their chayas from every night, especially Thursday night. Right? What does that do? They're like detached from themselves. They're clogged. There's such a lack of sensitivity. Certain people, yeah, they have certain conversations. Yeah. Others, they get sick from it. Lashon hara, rechilas, dirt, filth. Some people, they're chayas. They come alive from these conversations. My wife got a text from somebody. She showed it to me. She couldn't understand it. I said, "What do you want?" The person never learned chassidus. Was willst du? Text was that in the schus of somebody, if my wife, I guess she sent it out to or he sent, whatever, someone sent it out to a few people. In the schus of this person, if you could please take 2 hours out of the day, and those 2 hours don't talk lashon hara. Just 2 hours. 2 hours. These 2 hours, I'm not going to talk lashon hara. For the schus, for this person. So my wife shows me, she said, "I don't understand." And after the 2 hours, and before the 2 hours, and he said, "Why would anybody want to talk lashon hara?" What? Now, the person meant well. They meant 2 hours. Be careful what comes out of their mouth. That fine. It's a good thing. Fine. But you understand the chiluk. Someone's like lashon hara is it's conversation. Do me a favor, 2 hours, haltzachain, and be the good, holy robot who doesn't talk lashon hara. You're missing the whole inyan. Huh? And sometimes, we need 2 hours. Okay, start with 2 hours, tainis dibur. But the nekuda is, you want to be in a space, say, that's a chnish lashon hara. What are you busy with lashon hara? You have nothing better to do with your life. It's a contamination. I'm going to sit here in shul and start talking about my kids, how horrible they are. I mean, imagine a father sits down here and starts talking about how horrible his kids are, how horrible his wife is. I mean, I know some people do it. Meshugana? You're sitting here and telling me about your wife, how horrible she is, your kids, that they're sick people. You're crazy. You need help. So why should I talk about God's kids and sit down and start telling how? I mean, if you're talking about something productive and meaningful, and I understand, you go to somebody to talk about your kids, you're having a challenge, but to sit and talk bad about people, well, for what? For one, I don't mean to disagree. I mean, I don't mean to disagree with somebody. You're allowed to disagree. I'm not even talking about bringing out an idea. We're talking about, you understand the word. So there's certain people, the moment you become sensitive, you can't go to these places. Why? They're sickening places. Another person is not sensitive. So saying on the level of Chaya Yechid, if it's going to come in, there can't be a Taruvas Tevera there. It can't. It's nish soivel. It's not soivel that reyach. Can't be soivel. I'll tell you an interesting ma'aseh that happened. It's a ma'aseh shahaya. You know who Bob Dylan is? So Bob Dylan, in America, he's considered one of the biggest stars. One of the biggest. Anok Shabanokim. A Yiddish Engel, I think his name is Shapsi Zimmerman, became Bob Dylan. He's an icon of the 60s and the 70s. Rock culture. An icon of icons. So when I was a kid, he would come a lot. He would come once in a while, Friday night at 770, dressed up. He wears rags, homeless, looks like a homeless guy. So nobody would know that this person is one of the wealthiest and most famous people in the world. He would come as I dressed, Maamar like a homeless beggar. I don't know why, but he would come once in a while. Few people knew who he was. Once, he decided to come to a Fabrengen Shabbos of the Rebbe, of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Shabbos afternoon. He's going to come. And the person who was bringing him notified the Rebbe that Bob Dylan is going to be there Shabbos. So the Rebbe asked the secretary, one who was Rabbi Krinsky, who told him, the Rebbe would speak in Yiddish. So he said he'll stand near somebody will stand near him, and between the sichas, he'll translate, he'll explain to him what the Rebbe said. Okay, the Rebbe said fine. Bob Dylan came, he stood, the Rebbe was sitting, he stood on the left side. He was in a hood, he looked like a schlepper, a homeless beggar, but he was there. The Seder by the Rebbe's Fabrengens was between sichas, there were nigunim. The Rebbe would speak, let's say half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it was, 20 minutes. There was a nigun, people would say l'chaim, and then the Rebbe would start the next talk. This went on for a few hours. And everybody would pick up a cup of wine, and the Rebbe would look at every person who said l'chaim, and he would say l'chaim v'levrach, l'chaim v'levrach, l'chaim v'levrach. There'd be thousands of people, everyone, he looked l'chaim v'levrach. So after the first sikha, Bob Dylan picked up a cup of wine, and the Rebbe was looking. The Rebbe would look around by this nigunim. Sometimes he would you could see it vertracht a little bit, but then he would look, and he stared at him, but he wouldn't say l'chaim. He said l'chaim, the person near him, right, left, above, on bottom, but ignored him. And then the next sikha again, a whole fabrengen. He picked up his cup, and he wouldn't say l'chaim to him. So my sishayim. Mitzvah Shabbos or Sunday, the Rebbe asked the secretary, what happened to Bob Dylan? You said that he's going to come to the Fabrengen. So he said, "Es given." The Rebbe said, "Es given, ich nicht gesehen." He said, "Yes, given, he was there." The Rebbe said, "You sure he was there?" He said, yeah. The Rebbe was surprised. He says, "Okay." So it was very funny. It was a strange thing. So they didn't. It was a pella of a zach. I think they asked. There was the Rav there. Was Reb Zalman Shimon Dvarkin. He was a big Rav, a big Pesach, a big on. He learned by the Rebbe Rashab and Lubavitch. I think they asked him, or they asked somebody else. A bardas, a very prominent person. There was a person who had a hamtzah. He had an idea. He said that Bob Dylan converted to Christianity. I know, but this is then. He converted to Christianity. Lahalacha, Ayid is Ayid, but you have to go to the mikveh. Because of the conversion, you have to go to the mikveh. He says, Kedai to ask Bob Dylan if he ever went to the mikveh and if he ever decided consciously to become back a Jew. He said, no, he never did. He converted to Christianity and that was it. You know, life moved on. Huh? You convert, you go to the mikveh. It's not a form of it's not gatus because you're a yid, but yeah, he converted, it's a big thing, it's a shmad. So this person said, it was a fabrengen. You should go to the mikveh this week. He went to the mikveh, Shabbos, he came back, he picked up his cup, the Rebbe looked, l'chaim v'levracha. It was an interesting thing. The Rebbe didn't see that he was there. He looked at the second day, he says, Geven? He says, yeah. This is the Indian. Like the story with Reb Nachum Chernobyl. This is a Ma'aser Shahaya. And by the Rebbe, if you knew the Rebbe, there was no such a thing as a guzma. There was no shtick, no guzma. It was pshittus. It was Chumnish Gezen. It wasn't like there was no Baba Maises. There was no. He was wondering. He said, "Okay, I didn't see him." He said, "That he was staring, but he didn't see it. Maybe he saw that there's something that he can't see. I don't know. I'm not going to give a commentary because I don't know about this. I see things. Even I see people who didn't go to the mikveh also. I still today didn't go to the mikveh yet. My nekuda is." You understand what I'm saying? Sometimes you're rooted in such a place that the neshama in Chaya Yechida there's not going to be anything else. If the zirah, he's not in that space. So for Chaya Yechida to be beslapshus, it has to be a place there's no taruvas tevira. By Moshe Rabbeinu, v'ateiru oisiki toivu. That's why. You have people, they're nizer in a diktu kal shall divrei seifrim, yeah. So sometimes, frum is not always a compliment. As a frum is like a verquetschte frumme guy, right? That's when it's done in a way of verquetschtkeit. But sometimes it's exact opposite. It's actually very liberating. It's when your antennas, when they're not clean, and you start having static, it's called brain fog. They don't want to live with brain fog. They don't want to live with soul fog. People who their bodies are sensitive. I know I'm going to eat one little rugula. I'm not going to be in optimal health today. Why should I do it? Why should I clog my system? I can eat a salad at the bris. Why should I eat the cake? Other people, they don't care. What's the difference? They may not feel it. Other people feel it, but they have a taiva. Their coping mechanism. You understand? The same is true in Ruchnius. Why should I clog? I'm not going to clog my antennas. And even a diktu kal shal divrei seifrim, if you're a sensitive person, it's the neshama wants dvekus. That's what it doesn't want to go out of it. I'm not going to speak lashon hara for 3 minutes. Why should I speak? It doesn't work that way. You could ask whatever you want. Avada. That's a good question. You just look at yourself and you see this toiv and there's other things. Doesn't mean you can't connect to Chaya Yechida. No, it means, like we say, every person has a pchina of Moshe. But it means that for the Chaya Yechida to be behislapshus, to embody it, the person needs to realize how sensitive the Yechida and the Chaya is to an inyan of Ra. It like expels it. It's like, if you want me, it has to be kula shali, not chetzia shali. It has to be kula shali. You have to be completely in the flow. You can't be mekudesh lachatzoyin. Verstehst? The Gemara in Kedushin speaks about chetziech mekudeshesli. Half of you is going to be mekudesh, right? The woman says, half of me is mekudesh to you. My other half, I don't know. It's not Kedushin. Why not? 50% is so bad. Yeah, 50% of your wife, schlecht. Some people don't even get that. Was is schlecht? So a Yid comes to Hashem and he says, Chetzi mekudeshes lecha. Half of me is mekudesh to you. The other half, we don't know yet.
If you don't clear it out completely, it can't come in. So what's the condition?
That's what you have to know. Yechida needs exclusivity and intimacy. It's like in a relationship. For a marriage to be really successful, it has to be kula shali. The husband belongs to his wife not 90%, and not 99%, and not 99.9%. 100%. Because that fraction of a percent undermines the realness of it, the oneness of it. And the same is true the other way, by the way. A woman needs to belong to her husband, not 99.99999%. And if the whole 99% is going to be different. You know, what's the big deal? Is what little fraction here that everything else is different. There's no full trust. If there's no full trust, there's no full connection. There's no full connection, I'm going to go to other places to compensate. It may be subtle stuff. And I'm not saying that a person who has a good marriage shouldn't have other friends. I'm not saying that. You should have a lot of friends. And it's good for women to have friends, and it's good for men to have friends. I'm not talking about that. But there's something about the exclusivity that exists only when it's complete, when it's absolute. The Alter Rebbe had a chassid, Rabbi Kusha Lepler. I'm sorry, the Pinchas Reishis. He was once sick. He used to come sukkahs, Simchas Torah. He was once sick, so he couldn't come. So he stayed home. And it was Shmini Atzeres, he was in the sukkah. And in the middle, out of nowhere, he said, Ay Rebbe! It was a little bit of a pella. Anyway, the Chassidim who traveled afterwards to Lyozhna, so they asked over there, people who were there, if something happened, Shmini Atzeres, and they said, yeah, the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, was sitting in the sukkah, Shmini Atzeres, we sit in the sukkah, and he mentioned the Pinchas Reishis. He wanted to know how he is and why he's not there. And they realized that when the Alter Rebbe mentioned him, he screamed, Ay Rebbe. So they went back to him. And they said, well, moifsim, you're starting to make moifsim. They didn't like it. If they give you malchus, you're making moifsim. So he says, no, it wasn't a moifis. Ruach HaKodesh? No, it wasn't Ruach HaKodesh. He says, Ich hab übergegeben, mein Nefesh, Ruach und Neshama zum Rebbe. My Nefesh, Ruach and Neshama are the Rebbes. So when the Rebbe mentioned him, he felt it. He said it wasn't a Moifes, it wasn't Ruach HaKodesh. His Nefesh, Ruach and Neshama belonged to the Alter Rebbe. So it's like the wire is connected, you understand? So the Alter Rebbe mentioned him, he felt it. My point is, when there's a relationship that's a connection, it's exclusive. In Chaya Yechida, it's exclusive. I can't be Pesach al Shtei Asif.
You have the Amalek. You're fighting Amalek all the time, so how do you have 100%?
You don't fight Amalek all the time. You can't fight Amalek all the time.
He comes back.
He comes back. You don't fight Amalek all the time. So that's the pshat. When Chaya Yechida be'izgalos, it has to be fully. There can't be a taruvas tevira. And that's why it's not be'izlapshus. Because it needs a completely clean keli. So in every person, that's true in every person. So the refinement of the keli is not what creates the Chaya Yechida. It creates a space where Chaya Yechida could be manifested. And it takes a lot, because if a person doesn't trust their marriage, they look into other places, right? So you have to trust your Chaya Yechida not to look in other places. People look in other places, right? Why we like to have our eggs in different baskets. We like to invest in different companies. This company goes bankrupt, to have another company. But in spiritual life, it's toxic. Don't be mekudesh to two men. Like Eliyahu Hanavi says in the Haftarah of Kisisa, you know? In other words, If you're plugged in, you're plugged in. There's only one source. Either you're plugged into the source, or I'm not plugged into the source. If I'm plugged into the source, I'm plugged in. I don't need another source of electricity. I don't need another source of tainug. I don't need another source of life. If I'm halfway plugged in and there's static, so now maybe this one, I'll notch here, I'll notch there, I'll notch there.
Is this different than what some ascetic asking when he's 4 or 5 years old? You say, I want Hashem to appear to me, but
The Rebbe Rashab, he said, why doesn't Hashem appear to us?
Right, so is this, that sounds like, wow, this is impossible, or near impossible, not impossible, but very, very, very.
No, it shows who this child was. It shows what he was.
I thought you said that the Nakuda is a trigger for the bad needles.
Yeah.
So how, when you ask, and we don't have a fight all the time against the Maamar, isn't there a suffix that triggers the toxicity? So how is it that we don't?
Right, no, because when a person in the morning arouses their nefesh elikis, especially during davening or learning before davening, so then we have the capability of gaining control in our life, creating a hierarchy. And yeah, during the day there may be different things that come up, but you're anchored. There's a foothold, you're anchored. That's why the morning is so important, because the morning sets the tone. The Baal Shem Tov once said that the first thought we have when we wake up sets the tone for the day. That's why we wake up, we say Moedani. Because very often the thoughts come in, I'm worried, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm confused, I'm overwhelmed. Right, so that first thoughts, sometimes there's thoughts I can't control, they come in. We're not talking about that. You have to have compassion. But I want to take control, and I want to say there's going to be a hierarchy today. The hierarchy today is Hashem, Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Abraham is Gova. You know what happens? The animal soul actually says, thank you. Thank you. It's almost like a child who's regulated because mommy has a clear schedule. And the child is like, thank you. Oh, there's a father in this house. There's a mother in this house. Thank you. You know houses where mothers and fathers don't know if they're the kids or they're the parents? The parents are supposed to put the kids to sleep. The kids are putting the parents to sleep. It's like, yeah, Tati, go to sleep. We'll take over the house. Who's supposed to make dinner? I don't know. There's no parents, right? So it looks like it's nice, right? The kids. Somebody once told me that the trauma of neglect, of neglect is equal to the trauma of overbearing, of incessant pressure, of creating a boot camp in the house. That's the pressure, like I can't breathe, and this is the opposite. You can breathe alone. When there's a hierarchy in the house, it's refreshing. It's like, oh wow, there's somebody who's running this place. The poor animal soul doesn't have everything figured out. It's a behemoth. The Nefesh Elikis could say, don't worry, I'm in control. You're good. Your job is do the breathing, go to the bathroom, whatever you got to do. We're taking care, yeah? It's very refreshing for the Nefesh Abraham. It's much better. You're not a miserable person.
So it's putting a firewall before Amalek.
Atazai. So now when Amalek comes in, there's already a good fortress. What happened October 7th? I mean, I'm sorry for bringing this example, but it's a historic lesson because it's going to be recorded as one of the greatest failures in Israeli history, one of the greatest in Jewish history. It's that Israel put its guard down. They didn't understand their enemy. They didn't understand their enemy because they were living in fiction. They were living in illusions. At best, there was a paradigm that was poisonous and toxic and ludicrous that set into the Jewish psyche. We were so busy telling ourselves we have achieved the success of the American-Israeli dream of the West. With our technology, we own the world, right? Somebody's going to breach a fence. Our high-tech, we're the leaders of high-tech in the world. Somebody's going to breach our fence. You know how many computers we have? And they, the Hamasniks, Yimach Shemam, with their primal hatred and zeal, outsmarted the whole high-tech of Israel, one of the top high-tech societies in the whole world, right? Startup nation, together with Waze and all the good things. What's the point? The worst thing you could do with Amalek is put your guard down. Worst thing. They just, why do we have such enemies? Oh, we're democracies. Well, why should we have such enemies? When you're not rooted in Jewish history and Jewish identity, you don't know what anti-Semitism is, right? You don't know what Kiddush is. You don't know what Eretz Yisrael is. You don't know who you really are. That's what happened. Instead, we're fighting with each other. Yeah, Yom Kippur, no Yom Kippur, this type of court, reform, judicial reform, the Jews were busy fighting with each other, killing each other, and they were busy planning rape and another little Holocaust. They would do a big Holocaust if they could. Chas v'shalom. What's my point? Something for all of us to learn. Obviously, not to compare the outer Hamas to the inner Hamas. But everything begins in subtlety. Mallah ha'aretz chamas. Yeah. A person needs to have an unbreachable fence. And high tech is not enough. You can't run your Nefesh HaBahamis with a joystick of a computer. You need to be vigilant. You need to be vigilant. There was an arrogance that set in, I read that there was a girl, they had a bunch of females employed to watch, right? To watch the border. Because this was a good job for women. They're more attuned, they're more attentive, and doesn't require such physical labor. And they were sitting, and they were the tatspiniyot, they were called. The word in English is monitors. They monitored. And there was a woman there, a young woman, a girl. I saw her mother was speaking, and she kept on warning the high command that there's something going on in Gaza. There's something going on. There's unusual levels of training, preparation. One time, two times. At some point, her commander told her, one more time you come and drive me crazy about this, I'm going to fire you. In other words, suppress your knowledge. Now, I'm not choshed that this was deliberate. He thought she was exaggerating. She was dramatic. She was overly emotional. But where does that come from? It comes from arrogance. I know he meant well. He didn't think that she's saying the truth, and he wanted chas v'shalom this should happen. I'm not choshed that he was such a Russia. But my point is, when you're arrogant, you start thinking you know. When you're humble, you say, wait. Let's check, let's scrutinize, let's go deeper, let's examine, right? There's an expression in Svarim of Musar, Kol gay shoita. Gay is not gay, gay yud aleph. Kol gay shoita. Every arrogant person is a shoita. How do you know? The answer is, it's by definition. An arrogant person is a shoita. It's by definition. The moment I'm arrogant, I'm a shoita mamish. The prerequisite for all truth is humility. There was a huge physician in Vienna. His name was Dr. Semmelweis. In Vienna in the 1840s, I think crazy amounts of women who were giving birth were dying a few days later. 1 in 4, 1 in 5, to the point that where women refused to go to the hospital. They begged, they wanted to give birth in the streets, because in the hospital, the percentage of women dying was disproportionate. They wanted to go to private doulas, private nurses, not to the hospitals, a Vienna hospital. And nobody could figure it out. Dafka in the hospital with the top doctors, Vienna was a center for medicine. It was a disproportionate amount of deaths a few days after they gave birth. So there was a Hungarian doctor, Semmelweis, I think his name was Semmelweis, and he figured it out. What did he say? The doctors were going from the corpses of the people that died, and they were going to the women to help them give birth. Nobody knew that you have to wash your hands. So they infected these women with a horrific disease infection, and a few days later they died with tremendous yisur. So Semmelweis instituted that you have to disinfect your hands. He had a type of chemical they used. So what did the medical community do? You think I'm joking. They put him into a mental asylum. Semmelweis was institutionalized as a meshugane. The doctors are guilty for the deaths? Doctors? Doctors are guilty for the deaths? Semmelweis was institutionalized and he was beaten to death, a young man. 10 years later, they said he was right. And today, every doctor knows you wash your hands. You understand? That's how life works. And we have it in our community too. That's why the worst thing for a Rav, or a Yeshiva, a Rebbe, a Mashpia, a therapist, is arrogance. When you feel you know it all. When you don't have that bittul, that humility. V'nachnu ma, that we learn. V'nachnu ma, Moshe said, v'nachnu ma, you're a disaster. Rashi brings, it's a Gemara in Brachas, Daf Dunei. Moshe told Betzalel to build the Kalim and then the Mishkan. So Betzalel said, you don't do that. First you build a house, the exterior structure, and then you put in the Kalim. Moshe said first the Kalim and then the Beis HaMikdash, then the Mishkan. So he told Betzalel, Betzel, Kael, Hayisa, V'yadaita. You must be in the shadow of Hashem, Betzalel, because that's what Hashem told me. Now imagine if Moshe Rabbeinu had the Pesach, an issue with self-consciousness. It's a chutzpah. You know how old Betzalel was? Huh? Ben Ches. It's an 8-year-old little kind. Lo nifkechu einav. Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu was 81 years old. Nevi Hashem. And a little kid is telling you, sure you heard right? Doesn't make sense. Get out of here. What's a shoita? A chutzpah? What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? Wow, but Tzel Kael. You're in the shadow of Hashem. And arrogance doesn't necessarily mean arrogance. Arrogance could be insecurity. Arrogance could be just, you're not in touch with reality. It's different types of arrogance. Arrogance could also look like guilt and fear and shame, but I'm not in touch with reality. I'm busy putting myself down rather than understanding who I am. The Rebbe Rayatz once wrote to somebody, his name was Rabbi Avram Hecht, Anova shaloi b'mkaima yisoidasa gaiva. Misplaced humility is rooted in arrogance. Why are you asking me? Wer binech? Anova shaloi b'mkaima. Somebody asked him to speak. Avram Hecht from the Hecht family. He was later the rabbi of Shari Tzia in the Shari Zion in the Syrian community. Avram Dov Hecht. I heard the story from him. So he said, Vilner said, Anova shaloi b'mkaima yisoidasa gaiva. Misplaced humility, its foundation is gaiva. Humility is not always humility. Sometimes humility is arrogance. Of course it's a coping mechanism. Arrogance is a huge coping mechanism. It's a huge coping mechanism. Arrogance is basically blocking yourself from truth. And you know what? It's very hard. It seems easy. It's a miserable way to live, but it seems easy. It's all survival. Reishis, Goyim, Amalek. Once that happens, the person is stuck in a bubble, and then they already develop all types of ideas and all types of emotions, and they don't even know what comes from what. Reishis, Goyim, at the Nekuda, you'll always find Amalek. You're going to find something not al pi seichel. It's a chutzpah that's not al pi seichel. And that's what was born. And that's the Nekuda of Ra. And that's a charisei adeyovid, that you can't make peace with. Because it's toxic, it's there to poison you. Once you can switch that off, now you can already deal with all your midas. It's a switch, it's a tiny little switch. It's a message of self-destructiveness that is not rational. And it's rooted in the fact that you're not plugged into the source. You're not a manifestation of the divine. That's the core. Because from there comes all the inner oneness and bliss and confidence, and the need and not the lack of a need for ego. You with me? Das is the Nekuda. So I'm telling you, this teaches us about wars. The moment you put your guard down, that's what happened. Same thing happened with the Yom Kippur War, by the way. Golda Meir, Moshe Dayan, they had the intelligence. They had the intelligence. You know, I grew up in Crown Heights. The Lubavitcher Rebbe for 30 years didn't stop talking about this. And nobody liked it. Everybody said, you know, what do you want? What do you want? 30 years he didn't stop. Every Fabring. And I didn't understand why. I was a kid. Chanukah, Purim, Yutas Kislev, Yud Beis Tammuz, Shabbos, Reishis, Noach. About the misconceptions of the Israeli leaders for generations already, since the 6-Day War. He used to say, that's what it was, his expression. And people, what's Vilsta? What do you want? We're on the way to peace. On the way to peace. But everything, giving away territory, compromising, Palestinian state, everything. Oslo, Camp David. There's officially peace with Egypt and Jordan, right? Officially peace with Egypt and Jordan. You used to say it's fiction. It's their way of getting billions of dollars a year from America until they're ready for war. They have patience. He felt that Israel is anchored in a place of insecurity, and the biggest insecurity was the insecurity in Judaism and Jewish identity. He saw it. He used to see. He would non-stop talk about it. In our own life, we have to learn from this. The moment I give territory, right? I'm going to get attacked. It's halach and Shulchan Aruch. Nachrim shetzaru al ayaris Yisrael. It says in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Shin Chavtes in Erechav. The Rebbe would quote this Shulchan Aruch almost every few weeks. In Hilchos Shabbos, there's a law in Shulchan Aruch that if you have a city near a border, right? So even if non-Jews are coming and they say, all we want is we want to steal the straw. It's just money. We want a little money. So you have to be Mechal Shabbos and Yotzin Aleim B'Klei Zayin, because there's a chashash that if they have a foot here, they're going to take over the whole country. So what's the cheshbon? They're not saying that we don't want to take over the country. We don't even want to kill anybody. We just want straw. We just want to take straw. But if there's even a chashash, that one life is going to be endangered, so compromising that is an element of pikuach. You're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos today. Why are you allowed to be Mechal Shabbos today? Nothing happened. There's no Jews there. It's just a... So halach is really describing reality. We have to know reality. If there's a potential for danger of one person, that has to be the only cheshbon. So you used to say the only cheshbon has to be military, not politics. You don't mix in politics here. Whenever it's really a painful story, it's a sad story. It's a very sad story. I'll call upon him. What I'm trying to bring out here is in our own life, it's also true. You're never ever allowed to let down guard, because Amalek wants to come in right in the morning and take over. So you have to always establish the hierarchy, and then you're good to go. And if he comes, there's a good defense system. If there's no defense system, the infiltration could be very, very painful. And then to get him out is much harder. Yeah? Okay. Have a wonderful day. Pleasure to have you. Yeah? Oh, wow. Wow.